Most self-help books will tell you to be kind to yourself, to go easy, to rest when you're tired. David Goggins wrote this book to tell you the opposite. He grew up in a household defined by violence, poverty, and fear. He was overweight, deeply insecure, working as a pest exterminator at 24, spraying cockroaches in the middle of the night, convinced his life had already been decided for him. Then he made a decision that changed everything. Not a gradual decision, not a plan, a violent, uncomfortable, all-or-nothing commitment to find out what he was actually made of. What he found, and what this book is really about, is that the limits you feel are almost never real. They are constructed by your past, by your comfort, by a mind that was designed to protect you, not to push you. This is not a book about fitness. It is not a book about the military. It is a book about the gap between who you are and who you could be, and the uncomfortable truth about what lives in that gap.
Goggins does not ask for sympathy in this book. He is specific about that. He grew up watching his father beat his mother. He developed a stutter from the stress of his childhood. He struggled academically, was held back in school, and carried deep shame about his intelligence for years. By the time he was a young adult, he had internalized one story about himself, that he was someone to whom bad things happened, and that this was simply his lot. The turning point wasn't inspiration. It wasn't a mentor or a lucky break. It was a moment of brutal honesty, standing in front of a mirror, overweight, going nowhere, and deciding that the story he had been telling himself was a choice, not a fact, a choice. That distinction between facts and the story you build around them is the first and most important idea in the entire book. The facts of Goggins' childhood were real. The conclusion that those facts determined his future was not. He had been confusing the two his entire life. And according to Goggins, most people do the same thing every day without noticing.
This is where the book gets practical for the first time, and it starts with something most people would find deeply uncomfortable. Goggins taped Post-it notes to his bathroom mirror. Not motivational quotes, not affirmations, the opposite. Brutal, specific, honest descriptions of where he actually was. His weight, his failures, the excuses he had been making, the things he kept avoiding. He called it the accountability mirror. The logic behind it is simple. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Most people soften the edges of their self-assessment. They say, I could be more disciplined, instead of, I waste 3 hours every evening and I know it. They say, I should exercise more, instead of, I have been saying that for 2 years and nothing has changed. Goggins argues that this softness, this refusal to state the plain truth, is not kindness to yourself. It is the mechanism by which you stay exactly where you are. The mirror is a daily confrontation with the unedited version of your life, not as punishment, as information. Because once you see it clearly, the next step becomes obvious in a way it never was when you were looking away. How to apply this? Write down right now, not later, 3 things you have been avoiding looking at honestly. Not vague things, specific ones. The project you keep pushing back, the relationship you keep not addressing, the habit you know is costing you. Put them somewhere you will see them every morning, not as shame, as your current coordinates on a map, the starting point, not the ending point.
Goggins uses a specific image throughout the book, calluses. When you do physical work with your hands for the first time, it hurts and the skin breaks. But over time, repeated exposure builds a layer of hardened skin, a callus, that makes the same work easier. Not because the work changed, because you changed. He argues the mind works identically. The first time you do something hard and uncomfortable, wake up early, have a difficult conversation, push through exhaustion, it feels almost impossible. But repeated exposure to discomfort does not just build tolerance, it builds a fundamentally different relationship to difficulty. Most people treat discomfort as a signal to stop. Goggins treats it as a signal that the work is starting. The discomfort is not the obstacle, it is the training.
This is not about being reckless. It is about systematically, deliberately expanding the range of what feels manageable to you, so that when life presents you with something genuinely hard, you are not meeting it for the first time. Choose one thing this week that you have been avoiding because it is uncomfortable. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. A difficult email, an early wake up, a workout you have been skipping. Do it not because of the result, but because of what doing it does to your mind. Then do it again next week and the week after. The goal is not the individual action. The goal is the person you become through repeated contact with difficulty.
The 40% rule. This is the idea that Goggins is most known for, and it is worth spending real time on. When your mind tells you that you are done, exhausted, finished at your limit, Goggins argues you are actually at approximately 40% of your true capacity. The remaining 60% exists. You just cannot feel it because your mind is not designed to take you there voluntarily. He discovered this through extreme physical endurance, running ultra-marathons on broken bones, completing Hell Week multiple times, setting world records in pull-ups. Again and again, he found that what he believed was his limit was not. There was always more. The barrier was always mental before it was physical. The governor, he calls it, the part of your mind that applies the brakes before you reach actual failure to keep you safe. In survival situations, this is useful. In the context of building a meaningful life, it is the thing quietly keeping you ordinary. The 40% rule is not an instruction to destroy yourself. It is a mental model, a way of questioning the finality of the voice that says, I can't, or I'm done, or this is too much. Because that voice has an agenda, and that agenda is comfort, not growth. How to apply this? The next time you feel like stopping, during a workout, during a hard work session, during a difficult conversation, pause before you do. Not to ignore genuine physical warning signs, but to ask honestly, am I actually at my limit, or am I at the point where it became uncomfortable enough to stop? Most of the time, you already know the answer. Stay a little longer, do a little more, not dramatically, just past the point where the voice told you to quit. Over time, that point moves. The cookie jar. Goggins developed this tool during one of the hardest moments of his life. During an ultra-marathon he was completely unprepared for, running over 100 miles with stress fractures in his feet and no proper training behind him. When everything in his body was telling him to stop, he started mentally reaching back into what he calls the cookie jar, a collection of hard things he had already survived, things he had already proven he could do. Every difficult moment he had pushed through, every time he had been told he couldn't and done it anyway. The cookie jar is not nostalgia, it is evidence. Evidence that the voice telling you that you cannot get through this current moment has been wrong before. Specifically, every other time you thought you had reached your limit and didn't. The reason this matters is that in the hardest moments, your mind will forget everything you have already survived. It will present the current difficulty as unprecedented, as final, as proof that you are not capable. The cookie jar is the counter-argument, already assembled, waiting to be used. Write a list, actual paper, not a mental note, of every hard thing you have gotten through. Not just the impressive things, the ordinary hard things. The period of life that felt impossible and ended. The thing you didn't think you could do and did. The moment you were certain you would fail and didn't. Keep this list, add to it, and the next time you are in a hard moment, read it. Not as motivation, as data.
This is one of the more unusual concepts in the book, and it deserves a careful explanation. Goggins uses the phrase taking souls to describe a specific mental strategy for moments when someone, a boss, a trainer, a competitor, a circumstance, is trying to break you. The idea is this: instead of resisting or resenting the difficulty, you decide to use it. You decide that every attempt to break you will be met with performance so strong that it changes the dynamic of the room. You do not just survive the challenge, you outlast it in a way that is undeniable. You turn the pressure into fuel in public in a way that cannot be ignored. This is not about ego. It is about using external pressure as a source of energy rather than a drain. It is about deciding in advance that the hardest moments will bring out the best version of you. Not because you feel like it, but because you have decided that is who you are. How to apply this? Think of a current situation where you feel underestimated or where the conditions are working against you. Instead of waiting for them to change, decide what an exceptional response looks like. One that is so consistent and so thorough that it speaks for itself. Then execute it, not for recognition, but because of what executing it does to how you see yourself.
It is worth being honest about what this book is and what it is not. Goggins' story is extraordinary. The physical achievements are real. The childhood he survived was genuinely brutal. And the core ideas, that your limits are largely psychological, that discomfort is a training ground, that honesty is the starting point for change, are not just motivational. They are backed by substantial research in psychology and neuroscience. But Goggins is also an extreme outlier, and the book does not always acknowledge that clearly enough. His methods, applied without modification, can lead to real injury, physical and psychological. The 40% rule is a mental model, not a medical instruction. Pushing past genuine physical warning signs is not toughness. It is self-destruction with better branding. The version of this book that works is the one where you extract the philosophy, the accountability, the willingness to sit with discomfort, the honest self-assessment, and apply it proportionally to your own life. Not Goggins' life, yours. You do not need to run 100 miles to use these ideas. You need to do the thing you have been avoiding. That is the actual message, underneath everything else.
Goggins ends the book not with triumph, but with a reminder that the work does not end. He is still running, still training, still doing the thing most people his age have long since stopped. Not because he enjoys suffering, but because he knows what happens when he stops. The version of himself he does not want to become is always waiting. The most important line in the entire book is not about endurance or military training. It is this: the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself. That is where everything starts. Not in the gym, not in Hell Week, in the quiet, private conversation between who you are and who you have decided to be. Goggins decided. He did it loudly, painfully, and publicly. But the decision itself, the moment of choosing not to stay the same, that is available to anyone, including you, including right now.